Nobody in Bellwether has died for 26 days. That sounds better than it is. People hear the word immortal and imagine bodies that cannot be damaged. They imagine wounds closing, diseases disappearing, and old people becoming young again. That is not what happened here. Our bodies still break. We still bleed. We still burn and rot. We feel every part of it. We simply do not get to die. The first person we noticed it happen to was an 84-year-old man named Walter Vale. He had been in the hospice wing of Bellwether Memorial for almost 3 weeks. His kidneys had failed, cancer had spread through most of his abdomen, and his family had already been told he had hours left. I worked maintenance at the hospital. That morning I was replacing a damaged ceiling panel 2 rooms away when Walter's monitor began making a continuous tone. I had heard it before. Everyone who worked there had. A nurse named Monica entered his room. Walter's daughter and 2 grandsons were with him. His daughter started crying before Monica even checked for a pulse. I stayed in the hallway. It was not my business, but I had known Walter since I was a child. He used to repair lawn equipment from a shed behind his house. Monica turned off the alarm and pulled the sheet higher over him. Walter's daughter kissed his forehead. Then Walter grabbed her wrist. She screamed. I entered with 2 other nurses. Walter's eyes were open. His mouth moved, but he could not breathe deeply enough to form words. Monica checked him again. She looked at the other nurse. What? I don't have anything. The other nurse moved Walter's daughter aside and pressed 2 fingers against his neck. Walter continued gripping his daughter's wrist. They connected another monitor. It showed no heartbeat. A doctor arrived and checked the equipment before examining Walter himself. No pulse. No measurable blood pressure. Almost no electrical activity from his heart. Walter's eyes followed the doctor around the room. His daughter kept asking what it meant. The doctor said the monitor was malfunctioning and ordered Walter moved back into the main hospital. As they pushed his bed into the hallway, Walter saw me. His mouth opened. A thin, wet sound came from his throat. He looked frightened. That was all. We did not understand what had happened until the ambulance brought in Cody Haynes 40 minutes later. Cody was 19. He had been riding his motorcycle on the southern road when he lost control on wet pavement. The storm had dropped branches across half the route. According to the driver who found him, Cody struck a guardrail at highway speed. I saw the paramedics bring him through the emergency entrance. Part of his helmet was gone. One arm hung from the stretcher. The blanket over his lower body had already turned dark. The paramedic nearest his head kept saying, "Stay with me." Cody was looking at him, not moving randomly, looking directly at the man whenever he spoke. The emergency department filled with doctors and nurses. I was told to leave, but I stayed outside the doors with Cody's father after he arrived. His father worked at the supermarket. I had spoken to him dozens of times. He kept asking whether Cody was conscious. Nobody answered. After 20 minutes, Dr. Shaw came into the hallway. He still wore his blood-covered apron. "Mr. Haynes, your son has suffered severe injuries. Is he alive?" Dr. Shaw hesitated. "I need you to wait here." That's not an answer. We are doing everything we can. Cody's father grabbed his arm. "Is my son alive?" Dr. Shaw looked through the glass doors toward the treatment room. I don't know. Cody had lost enough blood that his heart should have stopped. According to the staff, it did stop several times. They would lose all measurable signs of circulation, but his eyes remained open. He responded when asked to blink. The surgeons operated because they did not know what else to do. They removed what remained of his left arm. His lower body had been damaged beyond repair. He stayed awake. They gave him enough medication to keep a normal person unconscious for hours. It worked for approximately 6 minutes. When he woke again, he began screaming. Not loudly. His lungs were damaged. It sounded more like someone trying to scream into a pillow. The sound continued for the rest of the day. The storm from the previous night had washed out part of the bridge on the northern road. Fallen trees blocked the old mountain route. Telephone service worked intermittently, but we could not move serious patients to the larger hospital outside Bellwether. At first, everyone thought that was the problem. We had faulty equipment, exhausted staff, and no specialists. Then more people arrived. A 57-year-old woman suffered a massive stroke while eating breakfast. Her brain scan showed damage that should have left her completely unresponsive. She followed commands with her eyes. A construction worker fell 4 floors and landed on concrete. His heart stopped in the ambulance, but he continued begging the paramedic not to let his children see him. A man was found hanging inside his garage. His wife had cut him down after an unknown amount of time. There was no heartbeat when paramedics arrived. He remained conscious. By that evening, Dr. Shaw had stopped blaming the machines. I found him sitting alone in a supply room with his hands pressed against his face. "What's happening?" I asked. He looked at me for several seconds. "I have 7 patients with no sustainable cardiac activity." "Walter?" 8, including Walter. "But they're awake." "Yes." "How?" "I don't know." "Are their hearts still working?" "Sometimes. A little. It doesn't matter." "What do you mean?" "Their bodies are not keeping them alive." I waited for him to explain. He could not. The road crews expected to reopen the mountain route the following morning. Dr. Shaw ordered every available ambulance prepared. He wanted the worst patients transferred immediately. Then a woman named Diane Foster was brought in from a house fire. She had been trapped in an upstairs bedroom until firefighters removed part of the roof. Almost all her clothing had burned away. Her skin was blackened across most of her body. I knew Diane. Her son and mine attended the same school. The firefighters brought her through the emergency entrance while she screamed without stopping. She had no pulse when they found her. She had still been screaming. I went home late that night. My wife, Claire, was sitting at the kitchen table with our son, Eli. The electricity had only recently returned, and several candles still burned near the sink. Eli was 9. He had spent the day listening to rumors from other children whose parents worked at the hospital. He asked whether people had stopped dying. Claire told him not to be ridiculous. I must have made some kind of expression because she sent Eli upstairs. When his bedroom door closed, she asked what happened. I don't know. Owen, I don't know what's happening. I told her about Walter and Cody. I left out most of Diane's injuries. Claire listened without interrupting. She had always been practical. When Eli broke his arm falling from a tree, I panicked. Claire wrapped it, put him in the car and drove to the hospital. She worked as a line supervisor at Marrow Components, a manufacturing plant outside town. The company produced metal casings for industrial equipment. Her job involved keeping other people calm when machinery failed. That night was the first time I saw her unable to explain something to herself. "Maybe they're measuring it wrong," she said. 8 different people. "They can't be conscious without circulation." "I know." "Then they have circulation." "Dr. Shaw says they don't." She looked toward the stairs. "Don't tell Eli." "I wasn't planning to. He's already frightened." "I know." Claire stood and checked the lock on the back door. I asked why. She said she did not know. The mountain road reopened shortly after sunrise. 2 ambulances transported Cody and Diane toward the regional hospital. Walter's family refused to transfer him because he had become increasingly distressed whenever anyone touched him. The first ambulance returned less than 3 hours later. The regional hospital had accepted Cody, examined him, and then contacted state authorities. By that point, news of Bellwether's patients had spread. Doctors outside town confirmed the same thing. Cody had no functioning cardiovascular system capable of keeping him conscious. Parts of his brain no longer received blood. He still responded to questions. Leaving Bellwether had changed nothing. Diane remained at the regional hospital. Cody was returned because his father demanded it. He did not want his son alone with strangers. That afternoon, a state medical team arrived. They brought equipment, medication, and people who spoke carefully, and asked everyone to remain calm. They isolated part of the hospital and restricted access. By evening, they had confirmed what our doctors already knew. Nobody who had been inside Bellwether during the storm could die. People who entered afterward were unaffected. We learned that when a state trooper was shot outside the hospital. The shooter was the man who had hanged himself the previous day. He escaped from his room while his wife argued with staff. His neck was badly injured, and he could barely breathe, but he walked into the parking lot. The trooper attempted to stop him. The man took the trooper's gun during the struggle and fired once. The trooper died before reaching the emergency department. The man then turned the gun on himself. He survived. That was when the state closed the roads. They did not build a secret military wall around us. There were no men in chemical suits dragging people from their homes. They simply stopped traffic and asked residents to remain inside Bellwether while medical teams investigated. Most people obeyed because they believed the situation would last a few days. Some people called it a miracle. Pastor Reed opened his church and held a service that evening. Hundreds attended. He stood in front of them and said humanity had feared death since the beginning, and Bellwether had been chosen to show the world what came after that fear. A man named Samuel Hollis sat in the front row. Samuel had terminal bone cancer. He had expected to die within weeks. During the service, Pastor Reed invited him to stand. Samuel told everyone he was no longer afraid. People applauded. My mother attended that service. She called me afterward and said perhaps we were witnessing something sacred. I asked whether she had seen Diane Foster. She ended the call. At the hospital, nothing felt sacred. Cody's remaining tissue had begun developing an infection. His body was not healing. Antibiotics slowed the process, but did not reverse it. Walter's kidneys had completely failed. His skin turned yellow, and fluid collected throughout his body. He remained aware, but could no longer move anything except his eyes. Diane's burns began breaking down. Nurses changed her dressings while she made a continuous clicking sound in her throat. Pain medication worked, but not reliably. Patients developed tolerance with impossible speed. Sedation might last 10 minutes or several hours. Nobody could predict it. The state delivered more medication, but new patients arrived faster than supplies. People who had delayed medical care because they believed they could not die discovered that survival did not mean safety. A man cut his hand while clearing storm debris. He ignored it. The wound became infected and spread up his arm. A diabetic woman stopped taking insulin because she thought she no longer needed it. She remained conscious while her body entered a condition the doctors said should have killed her. People drove recklessly. They drank. Some deliberately injured themselves to test what would happen. The hospital filled. The state erected medical tents in the parking lot. The town converted the high school gymnasium into an overflow ward. We called the patients continuing patients, because nobody wanted to call them dead. By the fourth day, 37 people had no heartbeat, but remained conscious. On the fifth morning, Claire went back to work. Marrow Components had closed after the storm, but management wanted to restart part of the plant. Claire said people needed normal routines. I asked her to stay home. "We don't know what's happening," I said. "That doesn't mean we stop feeding people. You make metal housings. We make parts used in water pumps. Half the county is dealing with flood damage. Someone else can go. I'm the supervisor. So I'm responsible for my people." I became angry. I told her being unable to die did not make her safe. She said she understood that better than most people because she had listened to me talk about the hospital every night. We argued in the kitchen while Eli ate cereal. Claire eventually lowered her voice. "I'll be home by 4. I wanted to stop her. I let her leave. At 11:20 that morning, the hospital received a call from Marrow Components. Part of a hydraulic assembly had failed. A suspended metal section dropped while 3 workers were beneath it. One worker entered the hospital walking with a broken shoulder. Another had lost several fingers. Claire arrived on the back of a flatbed truck because the equipment pinning her was too large to fit inside an ambulance. They had cut away the surrounding machinery but could not remove the section across her body. It was a steel plate wider than a door. I saw her outside the emergency entrance. Her upper body looked almost normal. There was a cut across her forehead. Her hair had fallen loose from the band she wore at work. Below her waist, there was only the steel plate and blood. She saw me. "Owen." I moved toward the truck, but Dr. Shaw stopped me. Claire shouted my name again. "I'm here." "Where's Eli?" "At school. Don't let him see." "I won't." The rescue workers transferred the entire platform into a loading area near the hospital laundry. Removing the plate would cause what remained of Claire's lower body to separate. Doctors said she would normally have died at the factory. She had no measurable blood pressure. She spoke to me for almost 40 minutes while workers cut through the metal. She asked whether I had packed Eli's lunch. She reminded me about a permission form inside his school bag. She said the washing machine had been making a strange noise. She never asked what would happen to her. I think she already knew. When the workers lifted the plate, Claire screamed until her voice stopped working. I will not describe everything beneath it. Her pelvis had been crushed. Both legs were damaged beyond anything that could be repaired. Part of her abdomen had been torn open when the plate moved. She remained conscious while the surgeons removed what they could. I sat outside the operating area for 7 hours. Eli stayed with my mother. I told her Claire was injured but did not explain how badly. Dr. Shah came out shortly after dark. His apron was stained through. Is she awake? Yes. Can I see her? In a moment. Did it work? He looked at me. What? The surgery. We stopped some of the bleeding. Is she stable? Owen, there is no stable anymore. I hated him for saying it. Claire had been moved into a former storage room because every normal room was occupied. Machines surrounded the bed. Her chest rose irregularly with the ventilator. Bandages covered everything below her ribs. Her eyes were open. She tried to speak, but a tube prevented it. I held her hand. She moved her index finger once. I'm here, I told her. She moved it again. The following morning, a speech therapist created a board containing letters and common words. Claire could not point, so I moved my finger across the board while she signaled when I reached the correct letter. The first word she spelled was Eli. He's with my mother. Claire signaled again. Do you want to see him? She moved her finger twice. We established 1 movement for yes and 2 for no. She did not want Eli near the hospital. Her second word was pain. I found a nurse. The nurse increased Claire's medication. For 11 minutes, Claire closed her eyes. Then they opened again. By the end of the day, medication no longer made her unconscious. It only left her confused. She spelled pain repeatedly. Dr. Shah adjusted everything he safely could. I asked what safely meant anymore. He did not answer. On the 7th day, Samuel Hollis arrived at the hospital. I barely recognized the man who had stood in Pastor Reed's church. His cancer had continued progressing. His family carried him in on a blanket because touching his bones caused fractures. Samuel begged every person he saw to kill him. Pastor Reed followed the family inside. He kept telling Samuel that his suffering had meaning. Samuel spat blood at him. That night, Pastor Reed's wife suffered a stroke. She joined the continuing patients before morning. The church did not hold another service. Claire asked me to disconnect her ventilator on the 8th day. She spelled it 3 times because I pretended not to understand. No air. You need it. She moved her finger twice. No, you don't need it. 1 movement. You think it will let you die? 1 movement. I told her we did not know what would happen. She stared at me. I asked Dr. Shah. He refused. The ventilator is reducing her distress. She wants it stopped. It will not kill her. How do you know? Because we have already seen patients survive complete respiratory failure. Then why keep it connected? Because suffocation still hurts. I returned to Claire's room. I told her what he said. She spelled please. I waited until the nurse left. Then I turned off the ventilator. For the first few seconds, nothing changed. Claire watched me. Then her chest tried to rise. Her body strained against the bandages. Her eyes widened. The muscles in her neck tightened around the tube. She moved her finger once, then again, then rapidly against the mattress. I did not know whether she was telling me to wait or turn it back on. I stood there for almost a minute. Her face darkened. Blood vessels broke inside her eyes. Her body continued trying to breathe even though there was almost nothing left capable of doing it. She did not lose consciousness. I turned the machine back on. Air moved into her. Claire stared at me. I apologized. She closed her eyes, but tears ran down the sides of her face. When she looked at me again, she spelled one word. Why? I did not know whether she meant why I stopped the attempt or why it had not worked. I never asked. That same night, a man named Martin Pierce shot his daughter. Jenna Pierce was 21. She had been injured during the storm when a tree fell through her bedroom. Her spine was severed high in her neck. She could not move or breathe without assistance, but she communicated through blinking. According to Martin, she repeatedly asked him to end her life. He brought a handgun into the hospital inside his coat. The shot destroyed enough of Jenna's head that the staff could no longer communicate with her. Everyone assumed she had finally died. Then one of the monitors detected irregular activity. Dr. Shaw asked Jenna to respond if she could hear him. What remained of one eyelid moved. Martin tried to shoot himself. Security stopped him. I watched police lead him through the corridor. He had his daughter's blood across his face. I made it worse, he kept saying. Nobody disagreed. After that, I understood there was nothing I could do for Claire. I could destroy every remaining part of her body, but some part of her would stay behind. Aware, unable to tell me she was still there. The government sent specialists. Neurologists, surgeons, and researchers arrived wearing identification from institutions I had only heard about on television. They tested patients. They took blood and tissue. They brought scanners into the hospital. They had no answers. Our blood still carried oxygen for a while. Our hearts still beat until damaged or exhausted. Our brains still produced activity. But when those systems failed, consciousness continued without them. One researcher described it as a separation between biological function and awareness. Dr. Shaw told him to leave Claire's room. News crews gathered beyond the roadblocks. People outside Bellwether argued about whether we were blessed, infected, or no longer human. Some residents demanded permission to leave. Authorities allowed those without serious injuries to relocate after examinations. The condition followed them. A man from Bellwether suffered a fatal heart attack 200 miles away. He remained conscious after his heart stopped. It was not the town anymore. It was us. Anyone inside Bellwether during the storm carried it with them. Eli and I had it too. I tried not to think about that. The high school gym filled by the 10th day. Rows of mattresses covered the basketball court. Patients who could still move were placed near the doors. Those who could not communicate were arranged along the walls. The smell reached the parking lot. Bodies did not die, but bacteria and damaged tissue continued changing them. Some wounds rotted. Skin broke down. Flies gathered around patients who could not move enough to push them away. Volunteers washed them and replaced dressings at first. Then volunteers stopped coming. Families stopped too. People could tolerate sitting beside a dying relative for hours or days because death promised an ending. There was no ending here. Some families left food and medication at the gym entrance but refused to enter. Others stopped answering calls from the hospital. I saw a woman park her car. carry her husband to the curb and drive away before anyone could stop her. He had attempted to kill himself by drinking a corrosive cleaning liquid. His mouth and throat were badly damaged. He crawled toward the emergency entrance using his elbows. I helped lift him onto a stretcher. He gripped my shirt and made a bubbling sound through what remained of his throat. His wife never returned. Claire stayed in the hospital because I refused to move her to the gym. The administration wanted the storage room for equipment. I told them they would have to remove me with her. Dr. Shah allowed us to remain. He looked 20 years older than he had before the storm. He slept in an office for 1 or 2 hours at a time. His hands shook constantly. I asked whether he still believed the condition would end. I don't believe anything about it. Could it stop as suddenly as it started? Yes. What happens to Claire if it does? He looked toward her bed. She dies. Immediately? Probably. I should have found comfort in that. Instead, I became terrified the condition would end while I was away. I wanted to be holding her hand when it happened. Eli began asking to see his mother. For several days, I told him she was still recovering. He knew I was lying. Children at school had seen videos of the gym. Everyone knew what continuing meant. Is Mom one of them? He asked. We were sitting inside my mother's kitchen. She had been caring for him while I stayed at the hospital. One of who? The people who can't die. I looked at my mother. She left the room. Your mom was badly hurt. Is she awake? Yes. Can she talk? No. Does she know who you are? Yes. Does she know who I am? Yes. Then why can't I see her? I told her she did not want him to remember her that way. He started crying. I already remember her. The next day I asked Claire whether she wanted to see him. 2 movements. No. I told her he was frightened and needed to know she was still his mother. 2 movements. I became angry. He thinks you don't want him. Claire stared at me. Maybe seeing you would help. Her finger did not move. You don't get to leave me to explain everything. The moment I said it, I hated myself. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She spelled sorry. I brought Eli to the hospital that afternoon. I told him he could leave whenever he wanted. I warned him that Claire looked different. He said he understood. He did not. When we entered the storage room, he stopped in the doorway. Claire's body had deteriorated since her surgery. Infection had darkened the skin around several wounds. Tubes ran beneath the blankets. Her face had become thin and gray. Eli covered his mouth. Claire looked at him. Her monitor changed. The machine had never provided meaningful information, but its alarm began sounding as her body reacted. Eli approached the bed. Mom? Claire moved her finger once. He took her hand. She tried to squeeze, but only the index finger moved. Eli began telling her about school. He described a drawing he had made and a spelling test he passed. He spoke too quickly and repeated himself. Claire watched him. For a few minutes, she looked like herself again. Then the medication wore off. Her body tightened. A low sound escaped around the tube. Her eyes rolled upward before returning to Eli. He pulled his hand away. I took him into the corridor. Claire's muffled cries followed us. Eli did not speak during the drive home. That night he asked whether his mother would scream forever. I said no. It was another lie. The fire at the school gym happened on the 12th night. I was sleeping in a chair beside Claire when the hospital alarm system activated. At first, I assumed it was another fault caused by the storm. Then the emergency radio reported flames at the high school. The hospital sent everyone capable of helping. I left Claire with Monica and drove a maintenance van to the school. Smoke covered the parking lot. Part of the gym roof had already caught fire. Firefighters dragged hoses through the main entrance while families gathered behind police tape. The doors were blocked from inside. Someone had chained them. A firefighter broke a side window. Smoke pushed outward, followed by screaming. There had been more than 70 continuing patients inside. Many could not move. We broke through an equipment entrance near the rear. The heat forced us low to the ground. Mattresses burned across the basketball court. Patients who could crawl had piled against the locked exits. Several lay on top of one another, still moving as flames spread across their clothing. The sound was worse than anything at the hospital. People whose lungs had already failed somehow screamed. I helped pull a teenage boy through the equipment door. His clothing and hair had burned away. He grabbed my arm hard enough to tear the skin. I carried him outside. He continued clinging to me after firefighters placed him on the pavement. Others brought out shapes wrapped in burning sheets. Firefighters extinguished them and moved to the next person. Nobody died. Martin Pierce stood in the middle of the gym. The police had released him to his brother after the shooting because the jail had no way to manage continuing prisoners. He had returned to the school where what remained of Jenna had been transferred. He chained the doors and started the fire. He believed burning the building would release her. Firefighters found him kneeling beside her mattress. His clothes had burned into his skin. His eyes were damaged, but he remained conscious. They carried both of them outside. Martin kept asking whether it worked. Nobody answered him. The fire created 43 new patients who could no longer communicate. The state moved them into refrigerated transport trailers, not because the cold would preserve them, but because there was nowhere else. The trailers filled with scratching and weak impacts from inside. Some families asked that the doors remain locked. After the fire, the state began transferring continuing patients to a medical facility outside town. Families had to sign documents acknowledging that treatment might only preserve pain rather than life. Many refused to sign. They took relatives home instead. A man placed his mother inside an abandoned camper and parked it in a field. He left water and medication near her bed, even though she could no longer swallow either. 2 brothers sealed their father inside his basement because he screamed throughout the night. Pastor Reed left his wife at the burned school and disappeared from Bellwether. People stopped talking about miracles. On the 14th day, the hospital administration told me Claire would be transferred. I said no. They explained that the building had to return to normal operations. Residents could still suffer treatable injuries and illnesses. Continuing patients consumed nearly every room and staff member. I understood. I still said no. Dr. Shaw found me arguing with the administrator. "Let him take her," he said. The administrator objected. Dr. Shaw repeated himself. Nobody tried to stop me. I borrowed a hospital transport van. Monica helped wrap Claire's body and move her onto a padded stretcher. Before we left, Dr. Shaw stood beside her. "I'm sorry," he said. Claire moved her finger once. I did not know what she meant. The drive home took 12 minutes. Claire remained awake. Every crack in the road caused pain. Her eyes squeezed shut whenever the van moved over damaged pavement. I apologized each time. At home, I placed her in our bedroom. The house was not designed for medical equipment. I ran extension cables through the hallway and borrowed a portable oxygen system. Monica gave me dressings, medication, and written instructions. None of it would save Claire. It only made the time more bearable. My mother brought Eli home that evening. He stood outside the bedroom. "Is she staying here?" "Yes." "For how long?" "I don't know." He looked at the closed door. "Can she hear us?" "Yes." That night, Claire's medication stopped working. Her cries filled the house. I closed the bedroom door and placed towels along the bottom. Eli turned on his television, but I could still hear her from the hallway. At midnight, he entered the living room carrying his blanket. I can't sleep. I let him lie beside me on the sofa. Claire made a thin, repetitive sound from the bedroom. Eli covered his ears. "Make her stop." "I can't." "Give her more medicine." "I already did." "Take her back to the hospital." "They can't help her." He started crying. "I don't want her here." I slapped him. I had never hit my son before. The sound was small, but Claire heard it. Her cries stopped for several seconds. Eli stared at me with one hand against his face. I apologized immediately. He moved away when I tried to touch him. My mother took him back to her house before sunrise. When I entered the bedroom, Claire was looking toward the door. "I'm sorry," I told her. She moved her finger twice. "No." 2 movements. "You don't forgive me?" 1 movement. I sat beside the bed. "You heard him." 1 movement. "He doesn't mean it." 2 movements. "He does?" 1 movement. Claire spelled home. "You are home." 2 movements. "What do you mean?" She spelled not his. "This is his home too." 1 movement. "You think you shouldn't be here?" 1 movement. "Where should you be?" She did not answer. For the next 2 days, I cared for her alone. I cleaned her wounds. I changed the bedding. I gave medication whenever she asked, even though it worked for shorter periods each time. Her body continued changing. The infection spread. Skin separated around the surgical wounds. A sweet, rotten smell filled the bedroom despite the open windows. Flies appeared. I killed them whenever I saw them, but more entered. Claire felt them landing on her. She could not move enough to stop them. I placed netting around the bed. On the 17th day, she began spelling the same word. Ground. I thought I misunderstood. She repeated it. What about the ground? She spelled put me. No. 1 movement. You want me to put you underground? 1 movement. No. She continued spelling. Bury me. I stood and left the room. She struck her finger against the mattress until I returned. No, Claire. 1 movement. You think it will kill you? 2 movements. Then why? She spelled dark. You want darkness? 1 movement. Why? Quiet. I looked toward the door. You don't want Eli to hear you. 1 movement. We can move somewhere else. 2 movements. I can soundproof the room. 2 movements. I'm not putting you in the ground. She spelled please. I refused. For the rest of the day, she would not communicate with me. That night, her pain became worse. She screamed until her throat bled around the tube. My mother called because Eli could hear Claire from her garden 2 houses away. She asked me to close the windows. I did. The sound remained inside with me. At some point, I covered Claire's mouth with a pillow. I did not press down. I only held it there to reduce the noise. She stared at me over the top edge. I removed it. I'm sorry. 1 movement. She forgave me. That made it worse. The following morning, I began building the box. I had worked maintenance and construction most of my life. I knew how to make it strong enough to hold the weight of the soil. I used pressure-treated boards from my shed and reinforced the top with pieces of steel. I made it wider than a coffin because I did not want Claire to feel trapped. That was a stupid thought. I was preparing to place her underground. She was already trapped. Eli came home while I was working in the garage. My mother had not told me they were coming. He looked at the box. What is that? Storage. For what? Tools. He knew I was lying. Is it for Mom? I set down the drill. My mother stood behind him crying. I tried to stop him coming in, she said. Eli walked toward the box. Are you putting her in there? She asked me to. You said she couldn't talk. She can communicate. You're burying her alive. She can't die. That doesn't make it okay. My 9-year-old son understood it more clearly than I did. Claire began making noise inside the house. Eli ran toward the bedroom. I caught him before he reached the door. He fought me. I want to ask her. She doesn't want you to see her. You're lying. My mother took him outside. He screamed that he hated me as she dragged him toward her car. I returned to the bedroom. Claire had heard everything. Do you still want this? 1 movement. I showed her the bell. It was a small brass bell that had hung beside my father's workshop door. I attached it to a long cord. You'll be able to signal me. 2 movements. You don't want it? 2 movements. I need to know you're still there. 2 movements. I'm attaching it. Claire spelled leave. You want me to leave you? 1 movement. For how long? She did not answer. I completed the box that evening. The next morning, I moved Claire into it. I placed a mattress along the bottom and blankets around her. I installed a small battery light near her head and left several bottles of medication, though neither of us believed they would continue helping. I connected the bell cord to her right hand. Her index finger was the only part of her body she could still reliably move. Before closing the lid, I asked whether she was sure. 1 movement. Do you want me to tell Eli anything? She spelled love. I'll tell him. She looked at me. I waited for her to change her mind. She did not. I closed the lid. Her finger immediately moved the cord. The bell rang once. I opened the box again. What? She stared at me. Do you want out? 2 movements. No. 1 movement. I had confused the system because I was panicking. I asked again. Do you want me to continue? 1 movement. Yes. I closed it. The field behind our house had belonged to Claire's parents. An old apple tree stood near the rear fence. Claire and I used to sit beneath it when we were teenagers. I dug beside that tree. A neighbor saw me using a small excavator and asked what I was doing. I told him I was replacing a collapsed drainage line. He accepted the explanation because people in Bellwether had stopped asking questions. Everyone was hiding something by then. I lowered the box shortly before sunset. The bell rested on a wooden post beside the grave. The cord ran through a narrow plastic pipe to prevent the soil from trapping it. As I began replacing the earth, the bell rang. Once, then again. I stopped the excavator and grabbed the cord. Claire, 1 ring. I opened the lid before enough soil covered it to make that impossible. Claire looked angry. Do you want me to stop? 2 movements. Then why are you ringing? She stared at the cord around her hand. I realized the movement of the box had pulled it. I adjusted the knot and gave her more slack. I'm sorry. 1 movement. I closed the lid again. This time the bell remained silent while I filled the grave. When I finished, the ground formed a raised rectangle beneath the apple tree. I sat beside it until dark. Nothing happened. Then the bell rang once. I placed my hand against the soil. I'm here. It rang again. I'm not leaving tonight. 2 rings. No. 1 ring. I no longer knew whether she was answering or whether the cord was shifting beneath the soil. I slept in the field. The bell woke me repeatedly. Sometimes it rang once, sometimes 2 or 3 times. Once it continued for nearly a minute. I spoke to Claire whenever it happened. I told her about Eli. I described the stars. I apologized for every argument I could remember from our marriage. I do not know how much she heard. The bell rang throughout the 2nd day. By the 3rd, there were long periods of silence. I told myself she was resting. Dr. Shah visited that afternoon. He stood beside the grave without speaking. Did someone tell you? I asked. Your mother. Are you going to report me? To whom? I looked at the bell. She asked for it. I believe you. Do you? Yes. What would you have done? Dr. Shah watched the raised earth. I don't know. Is there any chance she doesn't feel pain anymore? No. I wanted him to lie. He did not. Before leaving, he told me Walter Vale had been moved to a research facility. Walter had lost both eyes to infection, but still responded to voices through small movements in his jaw. Cody Haynes remained conscious too. Every continuing patient was still there. Nobody had been released. On the 20th day, I moved into my mother's house with Eli. He refused to speak to me. Each evening I returned to the field and sat beside the bell. It rang less often. I brought a book Claire liked and read aloud. I told her about things happening outside Bellwether. Researchers still had no explanation. People exposed during the storm remained unable to die, but their children and relatives outside town were normal. The condition had not spread. It had not ended either. On the 23rd day, the bell rang continuously for almost an hour. I pulled the cord and felt resistance. "Claire?" It continued ringing. I considered digging her up. Then it stopped. I waited beside the grave until morning. The bell did not move again. I returned the following evening. Nothing. On the 25th day, Eli agreed to come with me. He stood several feet from the grave. "Can she hear us?" "I think so." "You think?" "Yes." He approached the bell. "Mom?" It remained still. Eli looked at me. "Is she dead now?" "No." "How do you know?" "Because none of us can die." "What if it stopped?" "It hasn't." "How do you know?" I did not have an answer. Eli touched the cord. The bell rang. He pulled his hand away. "Mom?" It rang again. Eli began crying. He told Claire he was sorry for saying he did not want her in the house. He said he had only wanted the screaming to stop. The bell remained silent after that. My mother took him home. I stayed in the field. Rain began shortly after midnight. I covered the bell with a bucket, but water ran down the cord pipe. I worried the grave would flood. Claire could not drown, but she could still experience it. I found a shovel and began removing wet soil. The excavator would have been faster, but I was afraid of damaging the box in the darkness. I dug until my hands blistered. By sunrise, I had reached the plastic pipe containing the cord. It had collapsed beneath the weight of the soil. I pulled it free. The cord inside was loose. When I lifted it, the entire length came out of the ground. The end was not attached to Claire. The knot had come undone near the box. It must have happened while I was filling the grave. Every ring I heard could have been caused by the cord shifting, soil settling, wind moving the bell, or me pulling from above. Claire had never been able to signal me, not once. I continued digging. It took most of the day to uncover the lid. I cleared enough soil to reach the metal fasteners. My hands shook so badly that I dropped the wrench twice. Before opening it, I placed my ear against the wood. For several seconds I heard nothing. Then something scraped across the underside of the lid. Slowly. A fingernail dragged from one end to the other. It stopped. Then it scratched twice. One movement meant yes. Two meant no.